2,
1.
1.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 31 of the Resurrected Winners You podcast. As ever, my name is David, and I am sitting 2,021 miles across from Mr. Alex Aldridge. How are you doing today, Alex?
Ahoy, hoy, my good man. I am doing very well. It's nice that we both dressed up for this awards ceremony.
Yes. Oh, should have put on a tie. So yeah, Alex, you want to give us a rundown of what this podcast is going to get? Because it's not our usual podcast. It's not, but it's sort of harkening back to days of yore when we did the odd top 5, top 10s, was it we did?
Oh yeah. I mean, historically in every podcast format we have done Game of the Year. In fact, our first ever podcast in this guise were the Games of the Generation, weren't they?
It was,
Last generation.
Have we still got that on this spreadsheet that we're looking at? Top 10 Games of Generation.
Yes, that's episodes 1 and 2.
Excellent.
So we're going to follow that format again, I guess.
Yeah, so basically we've got some categories here. Well, I suppose it's prudent to run through the categories at the top of the show.
Well, you can run through the categories. First of all, what I will do is I will inform the listeners that we are doing our Game of the Year awards based on games we covered this year on the podcast, and only those, apart from a few select awards. So the list of games, we had 23 games that we covered this year on the podcast, which is pretty good going. It's almost 2 a month.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good going, especially because there's some big old boys in there.
Yeah. So I will give everybody just a rundown quickly of the 23 games that were considered for these awards, and they are Alien Isolation, BioShock Remastered, Days Gone, Death's Door, Doom 64, Gears of War, Ultimate Edition, Halo Infinite, Left 4 Dead, Limbo, Max Payne, Parasite Eve, Portal 2, Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil Village, Rogue Legacy, Sea of Solitude, Sonic the Hedgehog, Streets of Rage, Super Mario Galaxy, Super Mario World, The Final Station, The Medium, and The Return of the Obra Dinn, or rather, Return of the Obra Dinn. So they were the 23 games that were considered for these awards. David will now tell you what those awards are.
So, how are we doing this? Are we doing this top to bottom? Have you ordered these?
Yeah. I tried to, unless you're not happy with that order.
No, that's absolutely fine. We're going to have...
I've done the odd compliment sandwich a couple of times, if you haven't noticed.
Oh, yeah.
Something good, something good, something bad, something good.
Good effort. We've got best story. We've got best gameplay. Most bullshit. Best surprise. Best 2021 non-podcast game. And best old non-podcast game, worst game, and then bringing up the arse of the podcast with best game of 2021, which of the games we've covered, which hopefully you've all played and listened to and enjoyed.
Yeah.
So will we just dive in, I suppose?
Let's go through best story then.
Okay.
As I just read all the games out, you can tell everybody the nominees. I guess you're going to have to avoid doubling up.
Yep, okay. So the nominees for the best story of 2021 Winners You Style is BioShock, Alien Isolation, Max Payne, Resident Evil 7, Return of the Obra Dinn, Parasite Eve, and The Final Station.
That is true, sir.
I made it without doubling up there. I'm quite pleased with myself.
I was very impressed because, every time I saw a double, I was like, oh, don't say it. Let's get Parasite Eve out of the way. Don't think that's going to win, but
that was a weird one in that, because I was looking at that and I was kind of thinking, it's like, oh, Alex has got that on his list. Should it be on my list? And I was like, no, I didn't like it in the slightest, but I was oddly compelled by it.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was written by that guy, wasn't it? By that scientist. Based off some book by a scientist, and it's all about like cells and regeneration, and
because we looked up the book
Parasite.
And it's like 900 quid or something if you wanted to buy it.
Yeah. And I just really liked her partner, the really angry guy who dove out of a helicopter at the end. And of course, you know, the baby and the weirdness of that.
Mitochondrias? Is that what it was?
That's it. Mitochondria or whatever it was. Yeah. That guy did his research.
He did.
It was it should win most well-researched story of the year and also most expensive source material of the year. But Was it scary? No.
No.
It was not at all. It was just fucking stupid. And remember, it also should win an award for quickest restoration of a previously burned down opera house of the year.
Yeah.
Which they inexplicably go back to, despite the fact that that's where everything started to go wrong.
Do you know what happens in subsequent Parasite Eves?
Not yet, but I will at some point in my life. No, I've got no idea. I think no, I don't. I have no idea. I can't remember. I'm hoping that the nerdy scientist from Japan finally gets his end away because he was trying at the end, wasn't he? And then was it Daniel's son comes in and cock blocks him.
Absolutely cock blocks the life out of him.
So yeah, that's my mention for Parasite Eve. It's not going to win, but it was shit enough and silly enough to be worth a mention. Talk us through the final station.
The final station is another one in which I felt like a bit of a fraud. Is that the right word for putting it on this list? Because if you were to say what is the story to this game, I'm not sure. But there was something that compelled me through that game. And if you said
multiple times
again, since I seem to be on a bit of a train of presenting myself hypothetical questions. I don't know who's asking me these questions. Just maybe the hypochondria guy, mitochondria.
Yeah,
midichlorian guy. He's asking me those questions. Did I like the game? Yeah, I really, really like the game. Is it a game why do I like the game? I guess this is getting existential quickly. The gameplay loop is functional. It's quite fun doing what definitely. You're doing. I'm not sure that I can say it's very simple and not overly complicated. So is it the gameplay that I like about that game? I'm not sure. Maybe a bit of it.
Yeah, I like the gameplay.
The atmosphere, I think, is what really compels me through that game. And I'm trying to equate atmosphere and sort of so I know I'm making a mess of this, but so what I like about that game is the world building it creates and the bleak nature of it in the feel of the world more than perhaps the actual story. So I guess
I like what it shoots for.
Yeah, I guess it gets cut because it's still, I think deliberately so, but it's deliberately obtuse, isn't it? So
well, yeah, and it's not very well written in terms of English translation either.
There's grammar mistakes all over the place.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna have to cut the final station.
I think we said this on the podcast. Look, it stays with you, and this is probably one of the only stories where, having played it, I then I felt compelled to understand it better. And to look it up and do some more research on what the fuck actually happened.
Yeah.
Which sometimes is the mark of a good story, and sometimes is the mark of one that's just probably a bit too hard to understand or a bit too obtuse, as you said.
Yeah.
But the world building, this would be right up there.
Yeah, I guess so. And I guess it's important to distinguish these things if for nothing else, to allow us to move forward in our Game of the Year podcast discussions.
I don't know why I didn't put Return of Obra Dinn on here, because that story was really good.
It's really it's quite simple, I guess. In a linear fashion. Yeah, if you remove the gameplay from the game, odd sentence to say, but if you remove the gameplay from it, it is a pretty straightforward mutiny story that just has some monsters in it that.
Yeah,
there's not much to it, I suppose. So you're right. If you look at it in a linear fashion, it's just a mutiny story, really, and then people go a bit mad, and then there's just a sort of mass killing at the end of the story. Maybe this gets cut. It's sitting at number 3 on my list. So I think ultimately
being able to tell the story in a linear fashion makes you feel clever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's merit to that. The way it's told, obviously, is its key point, because it's dissected and sort of sporadically just given to you, almost in reverse every single time, in a way that really opens things up.
I guess this is the thing I'm not tripping myself up over, but of having a hard time sort of uncoupling is if this is an award for best story, how much, if any, does the gameplay matter? Because I guess delivery does it?
The narrative.
Yeah, it does matter for that, because
delivery,
it could be the best story in the world, but if it's not delivered properly, it's going to push players away, and it's going to affect the way that the story comes across and is absorbed.
I would say you could also put Max Payne in this category as well, where the story's delivery is almost greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, I think
Max
it is.
Payne is a pretty similar, pretty sort of straightforward noir revenge story, but the way that it's given to the player in the comic book panels and everything like that, and perhaps the fact that it's such a sort of a downtrodden guy getting revenge and getting trodden on throughout the entire game and just continually fighting back. And obviously all the dialogue is really cool, but that goes into the presentation as well.
It's also probably the only game in this list that I would see, like, someone says, is the story good? I would say yes for a game of its age. Like, I'm not sure if the game came out today we'd be particularly excited or discussing the story, because you're right, it's just a simple revenge tale. And you can remind me, was Max Payne anything before this game? Was it a known property?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Because in that case,
because it was all written by the guy who his face is Max Payne.
Sure. Because I can't help but look at the narrative in Max Payne and just see the Punisher in it.
Yeah.
And then I just think, because the Punisher's older than Max Payne, I just think, like, have you just watched that movie or read the comic and decided that, I'm going to do my own one of those? It's just some guy goes on a revenge tale murdering anyone connected to the death of his family.
Yeah, exactly. He completely gives up being a policeman and having any sort of moral standing by the end when he starts joining with the Russian mob.
One thing.
Okay,
so maybe do you want to cut it? I'd be happy to cut it now. But it's also number 2 on your list and number 4 on my list. So if you want to keep it and do a pass at the other games and then come back around, I'm quite happy to do that. I want to hear you.
Are we cutting Obra Dinn?
I think I would cut Obra Dinn. Yeah, It's a funny one. Looking through the games on our list, I found myself struggling to be overly stimulated by any of the stories on this list, really. And I think there's really, like, looking through the list quickly, the whole list of its in its entirety. There's one story I think that was quite good, one story that was entertaining, and the rest I don't care about. Which is it was a difficult category for me, this one.
Yeah,
I think what I'm saying is basically you'll probably get your way in this one, because I'm just not overly sold on anything in these categories.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily hit up a lot of heavy story games this last year. Kind of looking at games that weren't even brought into this, you've got things like, Doom, Gears, Halo, Left 4 Dead. Like, they're all just pretty standard, if not nothing. Limbo. There's not really. I mean, that's an atmosphere kind of thing.
Yep.
Sea of Solitude, terrible. Rogue Legacy, nothing. Sonic, nothing. Streets of Rage, nothing. Mario games, nothing. The Medium, that was all right.
That was all right, actually. And maybe if I'd thought a bit harder, I think my standout memory of the Medium, the ending was dumb, and my standout memory of that game, when I think, because we've obviously had some time divorced from it, when someone says
one of the first ones we did,
I just think of that annoying monster that was just like going about moaning in those stealth sections. It just wasn't, to me, it wasn't clear what you had to do to get through them, and it was just the story isn't something that stuck with me, and I think that's kind of where I came down on it. I was like, well, if it's not stuck with me when we played it within a year ago,
exactly,
that good,
because some of these games have obviously stuck with us, which is why we replayed them. Games like BioShock, which, considering you didn't put that in your list at all, I guess that has had less of an effect on you. So this second time around,
I came away from this thinking that it was starting to sort of show its age and creak at the seams a little bit, and I think the sort of narrative delivery through audio logs, for the most part, I think feels quite quaint and out of date now, and that's why I left it off the list. But I'd be interested to see what compels you about it, because you obviously did like it. It's your best story of the year.
Yeah, I think again, with it's hard to. Sometimes it is hard to keep world building and story mutually exclusive and not, give yourself some sort of bias because you really like the setup of Rapture and the ideals behind setting up that underwater city in the first place. But in terms of like bits of story or moments in a story that have stood out to me through any of the games we've played here, probably also ever as well, are the things like right at the beginning in the bathysphere with the "I'm Andrew Ryan" and the "Would you kindly," where he's hitting him with the golf club. The twist, which was pretty cool back in the day. I'd say the twist was less affecting, obviously, this time because I've seen it before. But the golf club bit, I still really think held itself up in terms of it just being quite a harrowing thing to watch your character do without you having any control over it. And that's what the game's trying to make a point about, that you just do what you're blindly told to in any game that you play.
Yeah.
But like I say, a lot of it is still going to come back down to like the music choices, the visuals, the setting, and the fact that it's like the purest form of these games, where it started to get a bit up its own arse, especially by the time Infinite came out and the ending there, that I do not think has. It certainly doesn't hold. I mean, hold up is not the right phrase, but it certainly is less impressive to sort of see them get really meta.
Yeah.
In BioShock Infinite, that it was to just see this game keep itself within its own narrative spectrum and just say, look at this weird twist. Yeah. Look at how we're kind of making a bit of a commentary on gameplay and player. What's the word?
Agency?
That's the one. Player agency. Yeah, exactly. But considering you didn't include it at all, and we have got multiple games in here that we do agree on, doesn't seem like it's going to win. I'm surprised I didn't put Portal 2 in here either. I don't know what I was playing at there.
Well, that's true. This story in Portal 2's fun, I guess. I find so. I guess my takeaway, and it's funny having come back to a lot of the games in this list that I've played before and coming back to them with a fresh or like a more modern eye on it, that I've found interesting is that, like, I remember coming away from playing Portal 2 the first time around thinking this is like a standard comedy narrative in video games. When I played Portal 2 again, I found Steve Merchant quite annoying in a way that I didn't the time before that, and it's really difficult to discuss. I think like there's a few podcasts I listen to that will from time to time drip into like comedy discussions, and I think it is so easy to sort of fall into a hole where you're sort of looking down your nose, sneering and talking about comedy like it's this sort of like high art form, like you're some hipster that's eating your dinner off a slate. Like, so I'm trying to keep it like, so like I'm trying to keep, it's so subjective. I'm telling myself.
I saw this thing with like a round table of comedians on on a channel once, and it had like Chris Rock and Jerry Seinfeld, and it was very much to that extent.
Yeah, and I that kills comedy for me. As soon as I hear people talking about comedy in that way, I lose interest in it. Like,
yeah,
and but because of that, but and this is, I guess, where I'm trying to like loop it around and close the thought off, is like comedy is so subjective.
Yeah, of course.
I just find it interesting that I bounced off Steve Merchant so hard when, in general, over the years, especially when we were at uni doing this podcast the first time around, like, I absolutely loved Ricky Gervais and Steve Merchant. And
yeah. And this game, I thought I would have given this a 10 probably back in the day.
Absolutely. And I just think, for me, the reason it, like, I think maybe the reason it didn't make it on this list is I think just my tastes have changed slightly in a way that I found this game's delivery a bit annoying, I guess. He reminds me of Vital Spark in a way as well that I find quite irritating. The orb things from Halo. I mean, they look the same and they're oddly sort of bumblingly comedic as well in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just my
There-
2 cents on that.
There's a very distinctive set of styles in that game. So you've got like Steve Merchant is kind of like bumbling, slightly maniacal, and then you've got GLaDOS, who is like passive aggressive constantly, and then you've got Cave Johnson, who is like arrogant and
I forgot about
pompous.
him. Yeah.
And then the three of those characters repeat those styles of humor every time they open their mouth.
Yeah, there's not really much development.
No.
And not, well, I guess technically there is, but I don't feel it. Yeah.
So it can become a bit one note, even though that note is, for games, is a good one.
Yeah.
It's not Monkey Island, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And we'll all move on, because you fight like a cow.
So
I will. I guess we'll leave Bioshock for a.
I
second,
actually meant to
two
ask
more
you,
games now that we've
I
both
meant to
put
ask
down.
you before this podcast started. If we've got to pick a winner, are we also going to have 2 sort of notable mentions? Because I think
let's do that.
That'll, even if we don't get a game that we want to win, it allows us to give our sort of games a sort of time in the sun.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that. I forgot that we've done that before, but yeah.
So
I forgot we completely stole the entire format of the Giant Bomb Game of the Year awards. But you're right. Yes. Right. Let's.
So I think it's because it's number
Resi?
1. Yeah.
Okay. Go on then.
This is Resi. Like, this is again like, this ain't winning no Oscars. This is not like storytelling is best. It's what's the movie that people always talk to? Is it Citizen Kane that is like genre defining?
Did you get forced to watch that at uni, or was
No.
that just my media studies course?
Yeah, it must just be. You must have.
Jack made us watch it. Fuck me. So
What was
boring. So boring. I don't care if that makes me sound like a Neanderthal. I don't care. It's really boring.
It's that one. Shawshank Redemption is the
I
other
love
one that
that.
people always talk about. I think I watched that one at uni, and Gone with the Wind, I think, is the other one that always jumps that you always hear about.
You didn't watch that at uni, did you?
No, I've never seen that in my life.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, no, me neither. I think Resident Evil 7's story really falls off a cliff
You'll be able to help me
halfway
with this.
through.
Is this anime? Because is it like, because anime is something that I've always said, I say it quite often in this podcast. I'm so interested in it. I've never found one that I can truly get into. Is this anime?
I would say probably not. No. I'd say it's perhaps like, it's definitely like a very outside attempt at trying to do like the Southern American horror at the beginning. And it kind of therefore comes off as unintentionally funny a lot of the time. Even though it's pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
The gameplay is terrifying. But the story of like the Baker family and all that nonsense is actually kind of really schlocky and Evil Dead sort of stuff, which really speaks to me because I'm a huge fan of Evil Dead, which is probably why I enjoy the story to this. But I only put mine at number 5 and you put it at number 7. But when you get that, once that little girl comes into everything,
2.
I'm not as high on it then. When she's the bit where she's kind of like following you about, or you've got to follow her about, and she's kind of running away, and she's like this. Actually, I'm going to cut a lot of what I just babbled about because it was just a fucking noise. But there is an anime called Elfen Lied, and that is very similar to what the little girl in this can do. She's got like crazy powers.
Are we talking about the girl that like
the little one.
Stuff like blows smoke in your face and makes you not see her? Is that the one we're talking about? The one that runs about the dolls?
Yes.
Is that the second one? She's got like a doll that she pretends to speak through. No,
that's Village.
Oh, I was thinking of the wrong game this whole time. So what girl are we talking about then? No.
In Resi 7, there's that little girl, and she's like the progenitor for the virus.
I forgot all about her. Yeah, okay. I think that
you'd have to go track her down as Maya when the game switches, when you're not playing as Ethan for a bit.
And you're right, this game does fall off a cliff because it's like Village is quite funny. Like it falls off a cliff, but it falls upwards to me. Like
yeah. Are you wanting to change? Because clearly I think that Seven's got a better story than Village, based off of what I've written in here. And I don't know now you've said that if I actually do believe that.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
think.
I do think I prefer it, yeah. I just think the opening to that game is so strong. The characters of the family are so good. When you're sitting around that table and they're trying to force you to eat all that shit, and you got the little old lady in the wheelchair, and she's actually the big bad at the end of it, and you got that crazy woman with a massive anus full of bees or whatever it was.
Very it feels very Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That first section.
That dinner scene is yeah. So maybe it's a bit too derivative then to take the top beans.
I don't know, because I think like it's a fine line between what copying and paying homage to something, isn't it? Like, I like where the sort of the new style Resident Evil games are going, in that, especially like with Village, it sort of continues the trend, and they're exploring different types of horror, and they sort of now run the gamut of doing all the different types of sort of Western horror that we have. And it's 7, isn't it? That's maybe one. Well, other than when I first started playing that game, you're getting chased around that dinner sequence with the guy. But when you're having to go up into the attic sort of area, and you see the girl's legs because you've got to climb in that sort of secret door. Yeah, that was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I love that his girlfriend goes absolutely nuts in it as well. All those scenes where she's just like attacking you with an axe.
Yeah,
that's pretty hilarious. And that dinner scene where, isn't it, Lucas like is trying to give you some shit, so his dad just cuts his arm off, and he's like, "Dad, not again."
Yeah. No, I think it maybe survives the first pass, because if we look at that in terms of like coming back around to games, we've got Max Payne, Resident Evil 7, Alien Isolation, which we've not actually covered yet, have we? And BioShock.
Yeah.
So we've got to get 3 from 4 and then pick a winner from that.
Yeah, I'm just going to cross them out and then leave. So there's the 4 there.
Okay. Do we have... Yeah.
So we need to talk about Alien Isolation, because you put that as number 1. So I think you should start explaining yourself.
This is such an odd game, because I think like it's possibly one of my most hated games of the last decade. But I think like one of the things that this game does well is it tells a good alien story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, again,
it didn't seem to be as derivative as I would have thought it was going to be.
No.
Even though it is visually, but I thought the story it told was one of its own.
Yeah. Did you ever, how far did you, maybe you didn't do the same as me, but after we did this, I watched all the Alien movies.
Yeah, I only watched the first one.
And it feels like again, like I ended up coming away from this thinking, what is a true Alien movie? Because they're all so different. Like the first one's a bit of a sort of haunted mansion suspense horror movie.
Yeah.
And then they get they turn like steadily more into action movies until like Alien 4 is just utterly ridiculous. I need to watch them. 5 and 6 sort of wind it back a bit and just become action movies. So like when I'm thinking about like what is an Alien movie, they're all so different. I have absolutely no idea what an Alien movie is, but to me this feels more akin to what people would describe when they say it feels like a true Alien movie, in that it is scary, and like that Alien, even though I hated it and found it deeply frustrating, every time that thing came along I was just filled with dread. So like it does feel to me like almost a spiritual sequel to the first Alien. It
definitely is, yeah.
And yeah,
do you think it ties the first two films together? Did you notice that it felt that it had done that, or does it just feel like a side story in between?
It feels like a spin-off side story to me, that can almost be taken as its own thing, but it does enough to sort of nod to the things along the way in the franchise. Like when you go and you the bit when you zoom back in time and you're following this guy's camera as he's going through one of the alien ships. Yeah. And I just think
that was the most derivative bit, though, wasn't it? Because that's exactly what happens in the first film.
Yeah. And it even does the thing that all the Alien movies do at the end, in which you think you've beaten the alien, and then all of a sudden it's back again.
Yeah.
I just think that was the thing this game did the best. It is as deeply frustrating as I found it. I thought it understood and appreciated what it was and what it was sort of building off of, like the world of the Alien. Like, I think walking around, I know this isn't quite storytelling, but I guess environmental storytelling is a thing that should be considered.
Yeah.
It is clear that the people that made this game maybe didn't make a great game in my opinion, but what they did make was a game that really, really appreciated and sort of almost revered where it came from. And
yeah, absolutely.
The walking through that ship felt like you were walking through a ship in one of the Alien movies. And to me that was important, and that still stands out as much as I don't like the game. Again, environmentally, it was perfect, I think, almost.
Yeah. It was compelling to get through.
Mm-hmm.
It had to have been, and we probably would have both just been too frustrated with the Alien to ever touch it again.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of why it ended up where it was.
She was not a bad protagonist either. She had a bit of a weird voice, but she was pretty likable. We've had some bad protagonists this year, but she was nowhere near one of them.
No, she was absolutely fine.
Because Ethan, remember Ethan? He just spouts a load of shit all the time.
We've got there's a few games we've played this year where the protagonists are just idiots.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ethan and the other one jumping out at me is Days Gone.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of when I said that. Yeah.
What an absolute idiot Deacon is.
And the girl from The Medium, she was a bit of a knob as well.
Oh yeah, I forgot about her.
Oh, and Sea of Solitude, but we'll get to her later. This is hard because we were sort of far apart every time we agreed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We need one more cut, and then we need a top three that we have to sift through.
Do you think Resident Evil 7 goes? Because it is so derivative in a way that, like, and
the second half of it's just not enjoyable.
Yeah. In a way, because I realise what I've just done is we've accused Resident Evil 7 of being derivative and then praised Alien Isolation for...
True, but that was a licensed game, so therefore you expect that to an extent, whereas Resident Evil just was like, what kind of horror should we copy now? And then pick that.
Yeah.
Like, we're done with zombies, now we're going to do Texas Chainsaw the game. Yeah, okay, we'll cut Resi 7.
I'd say that, which leaves us with Bioshock, Max Payne, and Alien Isolation as a top three.
Yeah.
I think, given that, kind of looping back to what I said before, I'll just say this and see if you agree. I would have maybe Bioshock wins because you feel strongly about it. I like Alien Isolation story. I don't feel massively strongly about it, and I think Max Payne's story is quite simple, and I think it's done well to get to the sort of notable mentions.
Okay.
So
we're saying Bioshock, Alien, Max Payne.
Yeah, I would have that.
Okay, let's do it.
Book it in.
Okay, let's move swiftly on.